Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, guys and gals, and non-gendered pals, welcome Wednesday, witches. Welcome one, welcome all to Witches Movie Coven, where tonight we have a very special film for you. So now it is time to grab your goat, or two of them. If you don't have a goat to grab, well, grab somebody's hand. And if you don't have somebody else's hand to grab, grab your own, because we are in for quite a ride tonight. We are in for 13 Ghosts. We will get to that in just a moment. I am one of your hosts. I am not Patty Negri. Patty Negri is flying around on her broomstick, and we are also missing Jason Mankey, who is also flying around on his broomstick. They are the hardest working witches in the afterlife, and so I am Richard-Lael. Richard-Lael is one name, not two. If I were just Richard, I would be a... But you may see me on Ghost Adventures. You may find me at University Magicus. You may find me reading tarot, or here in New Orleans, or giving seances in my fabulous home here in New Orleans. However, let us go over to the lovely, the beautiful Heather Green. Heather Green.
Hi, I am Heather Green, and I am the author of Lights, Camera, Witchcraft, and I seem to have misplaced my book. Oh, I had Patty and Jason's book. I'll show you those in a second. I have to brag. But let me show you my book, Lights, Camera, Witchcraft. It is the critical history of witches in American film and television. If you like witches and you like movies, that's what my book covers. I'm also a editor at Llewellyn Worldwide, working with fabulous authors on the subject of witchcraft and the occult, as well. Oh, wait a minute. And one of the ones I worked on was Dollcraft, and it is now. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Look at that little book. Grab and go. Learn about your dolls, puppets. I actually did the forward. I was honored to do that, but it is now. Its release. Its birth date is June 8th, and I have my copy now. I'm very excited about that. While I'm doing that, I'll also show off Jason's, which just came in the mail. Jason's, which was born May 8th, and that's all about Raymond Buckland, and we did a special show about that. But I'm happy to finally have my copy. I just need signatures in them from the wonderful authors that are part of this coven. So. But I am also a journalist and a member of this coven, and I'm very excited to be here to talk about all 13 of these ghosts.
26. There might be 26 ghosts.
That's true. We may be talking about 26.
We might be. And we go over to the lovely Miss Courtney Buckley. Hello, Miss Courtney Buckley.
Hi.
Are you alone tonight?
I am not. I am scared. I'm not alone. I'm in a new place. That's scary. So I'm in witness protection right now. You won't recognize me over here anywhere. But you might recognize me from Scared and Alone. And I am super excited to talk about. I will only be talking about 13 of the 26 ghosts tonight. But I forgot my Black Phillip. I forgot my wand. I'm a terrible witch, but I did remember my sunglasses just in case anyone has any invalid opinions.
You would expect nothing less.
So you may notice that Ms. Patty Negri and Mr. Jason Mankey look somewhat different today. So let us go to the Jason Mankey stand-in, Thumper Forge. Thumper.
Hello, I am Jason Mankey's evil twin Thumper. I am also with Llewellyn and a blogger for Pactos Bacon, and I am a witch and Discordian and court. Exactly.
He learned.
And Courtney's probably going to hex me tonight, so we'll see what happens.
Lovely. And Miss Tabitha Meadows, welcome.
Hi everyone. I am Tabitha Meadows, and I am Patty Negri's shadow side. I am a medium and psychic, and I'm super happy to be here as always. Thank you very much.
Well, we welcome all of you, and we welcome, of course, all of you who are in the comments. We are so grateful. I know that we had people counting down. All of the names are here. We love you, and throughout the day, throughout the show, we're going to be calling over to you. So keep those comments coming, because we have a great film to explore tonight. We have Thir13en 13 Ghosts. This one stars my cousin, Matthew Lillard. And before we get into that, I will tell you a little bit about I've been on Ghost Adventures a couple of times. And in the Los Feliz murder mansion, I was called over to be on Ghost Adventures, and I had an encounter with this ancient spirit long before I was actually in the house, and I was a little bit paranoid. I have to admit, I was actually kind of scared because they gave me these glasses that was supposed, not these, but they gave me glasses that were supposed to help me enhance my ghost experience. And I will say they did. I actually did see some ghosts. It was quite an intriguing time. And then I became friends with the ghosts. It lasted 45 minutes, and that was the way that they do. But before we go into that, I want to talk a little bit about these glasses, because these are from Magnolia Clothiers. They were originally designed in the 1830s, not the 1930s, the 1830s, to be worn on early locomotives. But in Hollywood history, these glasses have quite a reputation. You might recognize these as Claude Rains in The Invisible Man. He wore these. You might see them with Vincent Price in The Tomb of Ligeia. You might find them on The Addams Family. John Aston wears these. You would find them on Good Omens. David Tennant's character wears a pair of these. You might also find them in Dark Shadows, both the television show and on the Johnny Depp Dark Shadows. So a little bit of Hollywood history. So today, that is going to be my wand. Now, enough about my glasses. As fabulous as they are, we are here to talk about another film. We are here to talk about 13 Ghosts. Now, the plot summary of this one is there's two. So the 1961 is a family inherits a house from someone who just wants to be evil, and there's 13 ghosts, of course it is, and it's filmed at the Winchester Mystery House, and there's a woman they call a witch. We'll talk a little bit more about that one, but honestly, I know the 2001 a little bit better because it is quite the space odyssey. So in this film, there is this billionaire bad guy, because billionaires are never the bad guy, and it was so good to have that sort of switched. There's a billionaire bad guy who he's trapping these ghosts for whatever reason. He is luring them into some sort of great glass elevator with some sort of blood and music, and it's the 90s, late 90s to early 2000s. Of course you are. Of course it's grungy. And this psychic medium, who is my cousin, he has this special thing that he can actually feel the ghosts, he can see the ghosts, but then when he puts on the machine on these glasses, he can actually see them. And unfortunately, that when he's been contracted for 12 ghosts, but then they go to find the Juggernaut, who's been this serial killer who lived in a junkyard. And as it turns out, there were so many bodies that were buried inside this junkyard. And unfortunately, chaos ensues. Everybody dies, not Matthew, but everybody dies. And then we cut to the future, and we find Tony Shalhoub. Not to be confused with Tony Lube. That's another one. But Tony Shalhoub, he plays this poor teacher that has lost his wife, and he's struggling, and it is this Disney-esque family dynamic, accepting the fact that he trips over his son's scooter, which is lying in the middle of their one-roomed kitchen apartment. Like they all live in a kitchen. Yet he's poor, but he's wealthy enough to hire a nanny. And the daughter is old enough to have watched the children, the other kid who was annoying. That's okay. We're not going to, that's a plot hole we're not going to discuss. So it turns out that a lawyer knocks on the door, and we find out that he has inherited this house because his uncle was this crazy satanic witch. A what? A witch. He was a satanic witch who was in fact summoning all of these spirits because it was based on some ancient esoteric knowledge where someone had gone into a trance, and this machine required not 12 souls, but 13 souls to run it. And whoever was in charge of running it could see the past, present, and future. So they needed 13 ghosts. Now, in this one, the family goes. They're poor. They're excited to go to this house. There's plenty of money, the lawyer tells them. But of course, in the basement, where we keep all of our good ghosts, all of the good vintage ones are in the basement. So the lawyer goes down to find this hidden money, which was not very well hidden. It was in a brown bag on the levers in the basement at the bottom of the stairs, as if it were some major hunt that he had to go on. Anyway, the lawyer goes down, he removes the bag, and then the house comes alive. The panels begin to slide open. The 12 ghosts begin to release. Matthew's character, who is, by the by, the only redeeming actor in the entire film, not because he's my cousin, but just because he was really that good. He has ended up by sort of taking on this role, and meanwhile, people are getting snatched. He tells them, you can't, the walls are soundproof glass, so it doesn't do any good. Why are you splitting up? Because they're white people. White people always do crazy things like this in horror films. They always do. The nanny, by the way, is a woman of color, by the by. And Alyssa says, did the lawyer split? Yes, the lawyer split. That's actually one of the quotes that that the nanny says. So the lawyer actually does get split in half by the glass, unbeknownst to the family. And of course, this annoying little kid, this Danny from The Shining knockoff from Hulu, he somehow is lost in the basement, and there's a naked girl with her tits out ghost who is calling him, but also his dead mother. He doesn't know that it's his mother because he doesn't recognize her voice. And his mother has not been dead that long, but the kid is annoying. The kid clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. So anyway, they split up and they go looking. The ghosts are all released. People are ending up by being cast asunder, torn asunder by these 13 ghosts. And as it turns out, people are getting kidnapped. And Matthew Lillard, who 45 minutes earlier saw himself dead by the Juggernaut after carrying, that's my cousin right there, zoinks. After carrying this glass that doesn't even cover the entire hallway, but somehow the ghost is like, oh, I can't go to that. So Shaggy Lillard, he ends up by blocking Tony Shalhoub's character behind this glass so that these demon spirits can't get him, and then he's dead. Meanwhile, the other guy, the uncle, Cyrus, has formed this sort of allegiance. This guy, he's not really dead. You think he's dead. Why is he still covered in blood? Meanwhile, also the psychic medium touched him and knew things, but didn't know that he wasn't actually dead. But that's okay. I'm going to let that plot hole go. So as it turns out, this guy's not actually dead, and he formed an allegiance. Apparently, he was having some kind of love affair with the woman who was against this billionaire, but apparently they wanted to have internet babies or something because that's what billionaires do. And so she's actually in the house. Somehow she saves them, but then she's also the bad guy. This guy wants his nephew to unalive himself out of the love of his children, but too late. Matthew Lillard is dead, and he ends up by jumping through this wonderfully CGI 2001 CGI time machine, cutting, slicing, dicing. Wait, there's more. He leaps into that, saving his children. The whole thing has gone crazy. The nanny, who is a woman of color, says, no, I am leaving. I am out of here. I am not paid for this. And she is the wisest one in the entire film. And then I think they end up by leaving, and the ghosts are freed and the spirits are off to wander. Why are they free? Because the machine is dead. Why are they scared of flares? Nobody knows. But they are. And the ghosts go back off to join the circus in the other world. The end. Did I get that right? Was that a pretty accurate description?
I would say so.
If you have not followed that plot line, that is perfectly okay, because I bet you someone right over here to my right, your left, right over there, Heather Green, I bet Heather has some things to say on either this film and probably the predecessor, the 1960.
Yeah, I will certainly give you some 5 things to look at, to think about. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the basics, and then we're going to talk about and then I'm going to get my list because I flipped the page. Hang on a second. Okay, here we go. Now I got my notes out. So first, I can't do this all from memory, guys. I got the basics, then we'll do context. We'll talk about the cast briefly and the 1960 film and then the Oz connection. And of course, I have to bring that up, right? So first, the basics. This movie is directed by Steve Beck, came out in 2001, October, of course, right around Halloween. A perfect film for that. It grossed more than the budget, but not enough to make it a successful film. It was largely panned and was considered terrible. And they did, a lot of reviewers did remark that the cinematography was good, that the visuals were good, but it just was pretty much a panned movie. However, since then, it's become a cult film. And it's become more and more popular with time. And many of our horror films tend to do that because people just love to watch them over and over, and they they get a second life in that way, funny enough. And there's actually talk of a 13 Ghosts series coming soon. I didn't find any dates yet, but I didn't find anything to say that they had canceled. I think they're in pre-production. They might be in writing it, or I don't know exactly where they are. So be on the lookout for that if you're a fan of this movie. It will be coming out soon. The other point of this movie is that hold on a second. I had the reboot. Yes. So that's what we're going to talk about. That's the basics. So now let's talk about the cast. So the cast, some recognizable people, of course. We know about Matthew Lillard. Richard-Lael had mentioned who that is, your cousin. There he is, Zoinks. He was took over as the voice of Shaggy and also Shaggy there. He is also in Scream, Five Nights at Freddy, and She's All About That, and a number of other films, especially during that period of time. You will recognize his face here and there. Tony Shalhoub also been mentioned. Tony Shalhoub is very, very recognizable to many people because he's been on television. He's won Emmy Awards, Golden Globes. He actually won a Tony Award as well. He was in a musical at one point. He won a Grammy. So he's a pretty recognizable figure. He was Monk, which I know somebody in the comments already mentioned. He was in The Marvelous Miss Maisel, Barton Fink, Men in Black, Wings, the TV show, if you don't know what that. He was the Luigi in the movie The Cars. He was in Gattaca, and Addams Family Values, I believe. So he's been in more than that. Those are just some you might recognize. Shannon Elizabeth, the daughter, you might recognize her from that period of time. Her face is very recognizable if you were watching movies in the late 90s and into the early 2000s. She was in the American Pie, Scary Movie, Jay and Silent Bob, one of my favorites from that period of time. The movie Love Actually. So she was very a recognizable face at that period of time. The nanny, I can't read my handwriting. Radessa is a rapper, not in a lot of movies, but most of those movies did center around rappers and music. So not quite as recognizable in that respect. And then I want to mention also F. Murray there. And he was the obviously the uncle here, and he's been in a ton of stuff across the time. I wanted to bring up a few. He was recently in White Lotus, which I did not recognize him from, but he was, I think, in the second season of White Lotus, the Grand Budapest Hotel, Amadeus, Name of the Rose, and a number of other movies you'll see him in. So he's another recognizable actor, and there he is, and there's a few others as well across, but those are the ones I'm bringing up. So now let's talk about the context. I was going to do that first, but let's talk about the context, because it's really important in 2001 to know that this was a period of time where ghost films were becoming very popular. Thank you, Blair Witch Project. So in terms of we're coming out of that popularity of the occult being linked to witchcraft of the 90s witch films, that's all of those the craft and everything came from that. You're getting into Blair Witch Project kind of shifted gears as terms of witchy kind of occult films and moved it over into paranormal. And we get a lot of paranormal films, Blair Witch Project and everything that came out of that. And then in my book, chapter of the book I call, I believe, Witches, Ghosts, and Teenagers, because this is a period of time where that was dominant in witch films. And other ghost films for this period of time, if you're interested in seeing ghost films from this period of time, you've got Ghost Game, Cheese-E, but that's another one. The Woods, Blair Witch, of course, Darkness Falls, Tooth Fairy, Supernatural, Paranorman, The Conjurer, which we reviewed here. Everyone loved it, I know. An American Haunting. And there's a ton more. It was a really popular topic at this time. So this fits into all of that. I've always been surprised that they didn't do The Conjuring during this period of time. They waited another 10 years. So that's that. Then we'll let me look at, as soon as I get back to here. So let's talk about the 1960 film. I know somebody was interested in that. I particularly love classic Hollywood, and I was able to see most of the film. This time I hadn't seen it before. It was written by someone named Rob White. It was an original screenplay. It was not a story before. It was not a book before. It was an original screenplay. Rob White also wrote House on Haunted Hill, which we may review here at some point, right, Richard-Lael? You requested that, I believe.
I did indeed.
Yes. So it was directed by William Castle. And it is a standard, very, very typical paranormal type of film that you would have seen at this time. It very much looks like Twilight Zone and a lot of the sort of occult paranormal mystery sort of films that were coming out. TV was really rolling with this right now, this topic, and it was really getting pushed in the 1960s. It was becoming extremely popular coming into the 60s, out of the 50s. So of course it's not surprising that movie was made then. And Tabitha keeps flicking in and out as if she is one of the 13 ghosts, which is really, really cool, actually. Thank you for the effect. And finally, Oz. So it was so cool to see Margaret Hamilton. I always loved Oz connections and finding them wherever I can find them. So Margaret Hamilton, of course, is the medium in the first film. You will see her. She is brilliant, but it doesn't take much for Margaret Hamilton to play a role like this. All they have to do is put her in black and make her look austere and stick her on the screen, and pow, the audience got it. She was used purposely because she is the Wicked Witch of the West. And this is not the first film to do it. There's one in 59 that does it, which we have not reviewed here, but it's a Abbott and Costello movie called Coming Around the Mountain, and it is Wizard of Oz 100%. They're totally relying on her. And this does as well in a different kind of way. Of course, not maybe like 4 or 5 years later, she then plays Morticia's mother, another purposeful choice. And then by the 1970s, you're seeing her all over. Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street is just becoming more and more. They're really pulling on her and her role as the Wicked Witch of the West. And I talk about that throughout my book because I'm an Oz fan, and it's important. But here she is. And what I love, the end scene, one of the classics is right at the end of the movie. The little boy says, "But are you really a witch?" And she says, I think she repeats, ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. So she doesn't really say, but that's a brilliant moment right there where you almost feel like Dorothy is saying, but are you a good witch or a bad? You're kind of seeing that. And then she turns the corner, and as right at the end of the film, there's an explosion. She picks up the broom and she looks straight at the camera and breaks that fourth wall holding the broomstick and then walks off. I'm like, I love it. So another hat tip to the Wizard of Oz. And if you noticed in the modern movie, you hear one of the characters say, "There's no place like home. There's no place like home." So there's a little bit of Oz in everywhere, all the time, in all the places.
And there is also, you mentioned, Heather, that Margaret Hamilton had played Morticia's mother, Mrs. Frump, and which she did. But there is also another Addams Family connection in the 1960 to the 1964 series of the Addams Family, and that is in the original, one of the 13 ghosts is a lion. That lion is Kitty from the Addams Family television show.
That's fun.
So you have Morticia's mother, Mrs. Frump, and you have Kitty in this house, which was filmed in the Winchester Mystery House, which of course Patty was just there for a Ghost Adventures thing. See how we're all connected?
Twisted trees we weave here.
With that, who would like to go first? Ms. Courtney Buckley.
Me, that's me. I'm so excited. Here's the thing. This movie, 13 Ghosts, it was my first horror movie that I loved. It taught me to love horror. To this day, I didn't get to rewatch it this time, but I watched a little bit of it. But I've seen it a million times. But to this day, it still scares me. In that weird, like, remembering when I was a teenager and turning the lights off and watching it under the cover of darkness type movie. I just think, especially at the time, the effects were so great. The story was so cool. The ghosts were so cool. I don't know. I think that it made me fall in love with horror, and I love horror to this day. And I credit this movie for that. And I will say too, watching it, Nathan and I watched it for a few minutes yesterday. And Nathan is obsessed with the entire Lillard family tree, obviously, because he loves you and worships you. But also, anytime Matthew comes on the screen, he loses his mind. So I got to tell him that you guys were related yesterday, and he almost passed out. So that was fun.
The older I get, the closer I look to Matthew. Like, yeah. It's kind of funny because growing up, I looked more like my mother's side, very thin, and my mother was Cherokee, so very dark and but my father's side was Swedish and French. So I as I get older, as we age together, I go, yep, I think I get some genetics from that side of the family. No. Whether it is a positive or a negative, I don't know. So who has anything else they would like to say? Anybody?
I remember really liking this movie when it came out. And I rewatched it actually this afternoon. And it just, again, I'm terrified of Courtney. So I don't want to say too much.
Say your piece, Thumper.
Did you see the Joker?
I will say my piece. The reason the scenery was glass was to keep the actors from chewing it. I thought that it was very melodramatic, and I felt like all the characters were very one-dimensional. But at the same time, whenever the ghosts would kick in, I thought it was great. I think the effects, even the giant circle of death at the end, it was very much early 2000s CGI, but it still kind of held up, and the ghosts were genuinely scary. I think mainly there were so many moments that were overacted, and there were so many moments where I think that like the exposition was kind of top heavy. And something that bothers me about movies sometimes is when there's sort of a presumed unintelligence of the audience. And so we're going to spell some things out for the audience in case they're not quick enough to get it. And that just seemed to happen quite a bit. But at the same time, I sat through the whole thing, and I don't think I rolled my eyes that often. And I kind of got a kick out of it. And I will say, Matthew Lillard's character, when he came back at the end, I think the reason why the Juggernaut could like snap his spine so easy was because his back was worn down from carrying the whole film. And he, when his ghost appeared at the end, and he was very calm, and he was very encouraging, and he was very soothing, and it was like, oh, because he's not constantly being bombarded by all this psychic stuff, and now he's at peace, so he can turn around and encourage Tony Shalhoub's character to be at peace and to do the right thing. And so that I thought was very touching, and I thought that was a really good acting job on his part. I do remember when the movie came out, and this is probably why I thought I loved the movie so much. The DVD had the backstory of all the different ghosts and how they became the ghosts and what their tragedy was in life. And so I remembered all the backstory, and then watched the movie, and just like a ghost would appear, and they'd be like, "Oh, it's the torn prince," or "Oh, it's the angry princess," or whatever. And so without that backstory in the film itself, things felt a little flat, even though the ghosts themselves were really cool.
Which I think is maybe why they're doing the 13 Ghosts as a series. And I think they are going to flesh out the ghost stories, because really, Thumper, I agree. The ghosts were so fascinating, and the backstories in and of themselves were brilliant.
And the one scene that to this day does still freak me out is Shannon Elizabeth in the bathroom with the angry princess in the tub, and the princess at first trying to mimic her and trying to be pretty too, and then just like as she's about to get her, then things move on. But that scene was beautifully done and very, very creepy. And there were a lot of moments like that through the film.
It was definitely beautiful. I as much as I love Victorian things, I actually in 2001 wanted to live in a glass house so that I could never throw stones. I mean, but really this film made it so that I did want to live in that glass house. I thought it was so fabulous, and it's sort of postmodern nod to the Art Deco period and a little bit of that occult
steampunk.
Yeah, there was a little bit of. It was kind of, it did inspire me, which of course steampunk reached a major peak in the early 2000s.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That whole aesthetic of gears that don't actually do anything, which annoys me. 20 years ago, I might have been easily impressed by gears that didn't do anything, but 20 years later, those gears had better do something. I don't care what, the gears had better do something. Tabitha, what did you think?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I was on the side of the spirits, the ghosts of the house. No matter how scary they were. The reason being is they had a tragic backstory, and at one point these people were human beings. And like Heather, I had to write everything down because I can't possibly remember all of my thoughts that I had on this movie. And I absolutely love this movie, like Courtney, for so many reasons, but kind of a supernatural dive here. We'll talk about the Black Zodiac or the Dark Zodiac. These are the shadow side representation of the 12 zodiac signs. What they represent is the less desirable traits to each zodiac sign. Now, this concept is supposed to be used for self-reflection and personal growth. And there actually is such a thing as, doing the shadow work. But what it's not supposed to be used for is capturing souls for power. So here we have a man who is gathering spirits for the purpose of being more powerful. It's true. A contained spirit or idea gains more energy the more time the more time that goes by. I mean, some spirits can even become so powerful that they become poltergeist. So he uses the energy of the souls who died in a tragic way to create fuel for his purpose. But if he would only got himself a good mentor, he would have saved himself a lot of money and a lot of time, because it's something that everyone can naturally do. So because he wanted to be able to see everything past, present, and future, and that's something that everyone has the ability to do if you work on it over time. And when people pass in a tragic way, a greater energetic imprint is made and housed in a space, and is made and housed in that space and time. these deaths create an energy around unfinished businesses, or it leaves a fragmentation of a person's soul behind. So kind of you're not really trapping an entire soul, so to speak, but you're capturing an imprint in time that they left behind. This imprinted energy is so powerful that sensitive beings can link in or tap in hundreds or even thousands of years later, depending on how practiced someone is. Or some people, it just comes really natural, and the past just comes streaming in like television, like a movie. So the idea of a house being a machine, it's not far from reality. What some sensitives would call a sentient. It's a sentient home. It holds so much energy that it seems to take on a life of its own. So where Cyrus went out and collected ghosts, all that he had to really do was find a home with a tragic history. Today there is a concern, and I'm not here to tell folks what you can and can't do. That's not my style. There's this concern around people buying known haunted property for the purpose of making money in exchange for paranormal investigations. There are some owners who have rules as soon as you set foot into these properties. One controversial rule is no crossing over spirits. There are some folks who will even sneak off and perform their own ceremonies, adding another layer to it, sometimes multiple layered haunting to begin with. And so, this machine, this house can or could have become more sentient, powered by the dead. And it's true, they can be powered by the dead. But I find it interesting that the living think that they have ultimate domain over a world that we know little to nothing about.
And if I may interrupt for just a second, I don't mean to derail your thought, but for me, that is an important point about how the houses are they can capture that essence. Now, I will tell you, the original 13 Ghosts was filmed at the Winchester Murder Mystery House. And of course, those of you who do not know the story, Mrs. Winchester was the heir to the Winchester rifles, and she was being haunted. Her husband died, her child died. All of these people were dying. And it was said she had gone to a medium, and the medium had told her, you are cursed, and you have to build every single day for the rest of your life. That way, then you will stave off the many hundreds of thousands of people that have been unalived by this rifle. So Mrs. Winchester did, but even in a broader spectrum, because the 19th century and 19th century architecture is one of my special interests, one of my fortes. 19th century homes were oftentimes designed to enhance spiritualism from the get-go. Now, the Winchester house, you have rooms that go to nowhere, windows that open into other rooms. You have stairs that go to nothing. That's an extreme case. But in a middle-class home, you would have, even still, you would have hidden panels. You would have turrets and towers designed to channel energy into that one space. In Pasadena, the home I lived in was an 1890 Queen Anne Victorian. My seance room was an octagon-shaped room. And sometimes that room would shake so heavily under the power of spiritualism that I and my clients thought that there was an earthquake. And then we would Google and we'd find out there was not. So a 19th century home has already those things manifest in them to not only trap souls, sometimes not only to scare the souls so that they don't exhaust this, they exhaust themselves and don't chase after Mrs. Winchester. But you have to remember the spiritualism of the 19th century. You had gone through the Civil War. You've gone through a great many number of deaths. And then you get the Ouija board coming out in the 1890s. It was a major time of spiritualism. So old homes do have that. Then you add the layer on the fact that in older homes, you didn't have a living room. You had a death room. The death room was the nicest room in the house. It was the largest room. They would lay you in wait. So that's how the house became known as being haunted, the Victorian house. Think of a haunted house. Typically, it is Victorian. Meanwhile, this one in 13 Ghosts was not. I'm sorry. Go on, Tabitha.
Oh, I was finished. So no, it was good that you picked up behind that. But also to mention the spells, or in modern day, people can put up wards to keep things in or out. So that's another thing that I just wanted to mention.
Yep, you can absolutely put wards. I tell people whenever I am dealing with homes that are possessed or haunted, I tell them, write your name on a mirror, put it under the bed, because that's a portal and it blocks that out. Put your salt in the corners of your room. Do a red cord around your house. There are many wards that you can do that will help protect you. Heather, you haven't said anything about the film. You did your thing. But what do you think, Heather?
I'm just gonna look at Courtney real
I'm
quick.
looking you right in the eye.
I'm looking at you right in the eye, and I am not afraid. Here we go. Get ready. I really, really enjoyed the concept of the film. I really enjoyed the story, the idea. It pulls from traditional horror where an innocent family goes into a haunted occult space. Very classic. Loved it. I love the I love the ingenuity of the idea of these being trapped ghosts and needing to be released, and sort of the human aspect of that, because I also, like Tabitha, am appalled by anyone trapping spirits.
Mhm.
So I love the whole idea, and I love classic horror. I wanted to love this movie for that reason, but I did not. I would have done it differently. I would have done it with less freaky looking ghosts and made it more haunting and less graphically ghouly. I think it would have been more effective. I think the acting was, whatever, no big deal, not neither here nor there. I did mind it. It just was, except for your cousin, who was actually the best one in the film. I think his role was brilliant. I think his acting was brilliant. He captured exactly what he needed to capture. I did not like the house. I would have liked it to be a Victorian house. I did not like the technological steampunk aspect. I would have liked it to be more classically spooky, not as dry and 1950s TV show as the original, but something. It could have been so much better, and I hope they redo it one day with a more subtle haunting feel, similar to what you find in The Conjuring, or some, it can have a death count, it can be scary. We don't need to have the graphicness of it. The guy splitting in half, it was just, for me, that was unnecessary. I didn't need to see all those. That
It was
blood.
all for that funny joke, thoe. Did the lawyer?
It was a great joke.
Yeah.
So
But that was also.
I wish. I'll just say, I love the concept, and I wish I would have done it differently.
The cutting the lawyer in half, though, was very much a trope of mainly more sci-fi movies than horror at the time, but like Resident Evil and
Ghost
the indie
Ship.
film, the indie film Cube, if you've ever seen that, where there were these scenes that were very people getting cut up in very precise ways, and so which was always sort of, was never necessarily relevant to the plot. It was just like, hey, look what we got the computers to do.
Right.
Like, look at the effect.
And that's
we
always my
created.
problem. And that's always my
Yeah.
problem. If something like that it doesn't serve the story
Yeah.
comes first.
Why didn't the lawyer become a ghost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Why wasn't he the 13th ghost?
Right?
There-
The 13th
There were
ghost,
so many ghosts.
the 13th ghost had, according to the plot, had to do so willingly.
Yeah.
And I agree, Heather. I think 20 years ago, I liked that it was sort of not the typical old house. But as I've matured, I really do wish that it would have been. I wish it would have been My Parlor. You know, I wish that it, because even when you think of both The Haunting from 1964, was it, and the 1999 versions, The Haunting is it is the classic, clean, tidy haunted house. It wasn't covered in sheets and spider webs. The house itself had a character of its own, and I would have liked this film a lot better had they used that classic haunted house.
I have something to say. I have something very important to say. I've heard all of these opinions about the movie that is my love and whatever. Fine. However, I feel like even to this day, watching this movie and seeing that weird house, it doesn't even feel like a house. Why would anybody want to inherit that? That makes no sense. They can barely even live there because it's not a house. It's a trap.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
So, right. But like it shouldn't be anything else because it's a trap. It's not a house.
It's like a Dybbuk box.
So if you change it into something like a house, it changes everything. And if you say, hold on, if you say they have to change everything, then guess what I can do now? And I tested it out a little bit ago. I can turn my light off now.
I do think look at Travis is disappearing. Oh no.
I think you might be onto something there, Courtney, because the uncle would not have built a Victorian house because we are 125 years since the Victorian era. We just are. We are. There's no getting around it. So had he built the house, he would not have built a Victorian house. But the story from the original, the story was not about building the house. You know, that was what was added. The technological aspect of building this house around this medieval manuscript and all that was not in the original film. That was not that was made for 2001. I keep wanting to say 2021. So I think if the movie was to be adapted again, I would adapt it without that element entirely. If he was going to build a house, it doesn't necessarily, I don't think, need to be Victorian. It just needs to not be a machine. The trap could be there, but the trap would be a more metaphysical, esoteric trap to me. It would be something more like, you know, you could turn a Harry Potter castle could have been a trap with the things that moved around. You could do anything. The story is so simple that you could do so much to it and change the way it is and make it another fabulous adaptation without all of the gears that do nothing and the glass wall. Who walks into that place and goes, wow, look at this house?
I know.
I mean, if you're a witch, you're not gonna go around and writing spells and things on your walls where people could see them. So the concept of the glasses are really neat. So they could have the glasses that would allow you to see all the spells and sigils.
Well, and they did that, but it was sort of a weird redundancy because, you know, they walk in and there's Latin and or Elvish all over the walls, and then they put on the glasses and they're like, oh, hey, there's more Latin. And it's like, that was a little much. Like, it could have just been, hey, if you put on the glasses, you see the Latin.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Nobody said, why is there writing all over these walls? Why can I see through 7 rooms and there's someone peeing down the hole over there? I could see them.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything.
I do.
The bathroom did have the bricks that were sort of not see-through. It had a little bit of privacy in the bathroom.
We don't know that.
I do have a quote from the original film that I actually think is quite apropos, since we were talking about the houses. One of the films in the 1960 version, they are so poor. He's a professor who is poor, and they keep repossessing his furniture. Like, you know, he didn't pay the exorcist and they repossess the furniture all the time. So the kid makes a wish that he wishes for a house that has furniture that's all theirs, that they can't take away. Then this creep answers the door and he says, come down to the lawyer's office, or knocks on the door. Once he's at the lawyer's office, this is, by the way, 1960. And the lawyer says, you've inherited this house, but I wouldn't get my hopes up because this is the kind of house they built 50 years ago, which would put it at 1910. Now, we know the Winchester house is not 1910. It's actually 19th century. So that I find to be funny. But even when we think about a 50-year-old house being that outdated, now a house could be, an apartment building can be 50 years old. Shopping malls, if they still exist, are 50 years old. Even right now, the plane Air Force One is still a 50-year-old plane. So, but it was such a change from 1900 to 1960 that it was seen as being out of touch and old-fashioned. That's the quotes that I have.
I have a couple of quotes, and one of them ties into my feeling of the top-heavy exposition, where at the when we're first introduced to the family, and Shannon Elizabeth goes, "You're the best little brother." So in order, like, we can't just see kids playing in the backyard. We had to say, "This is my little brother," in case you haven't figured that out. And of course, we talked about "Did the lawyer split," which was the greatest line in the film, and several others. Like, that was really well done. A line that, because one of my issues in rewatching the film was kind of how everybody was not very multidimensional, and Tony Shalhoub's character, whose persona was math teacher, and he walks in the house and he goes, "Such a wealth of knowledge," which was just it felt very forced, but it was sort of in character, but it was also just like, I'm the smart one. And so, like, put an arrow there. The lawyer, it's not that he had great lines. He had a one-dimensional face to let everybody know that he was evil. So he'd be like, "You sure did inherit a house."
Yeah.
And then it's like, it was that there was that, like, one point when he's driving the car, the family's driving their cars, and they're like, "Neat, yay, we're going to the house." And then it flashed to the lawyer, and it was like film noir for a second, where it was just the light on his eyes, so you can see how evil his eyes were, and stuff like, there was some camp value there that made me kind of appreciate it. And then the nanny / babysitter's very last line, the last line of the movie was, "I quit," and I was like, so do I. I'm right there with you.
Maybe Courtney can give us some quotes to redeem this show for her.
I don't have any quotes. I didn't get to rewatch the movie.
Yeah, I had to take on that role tonight. There was the one other quote. I don't have the whole quote, but it's when Matthew Lillard's character is going on and on about revenants and phantasm and all this stuff, and then he's like, after about a good 30 seconds of using every word except ghost, he goes, "I'll dumb it down, ghosts." And it's like, you could have led with that. Like, which did fit his character very well, but at the same time, it was just like, when he said that, I was like, oh, this is why people don't like your character. This is why you have trouble making friends, Matthew Lillard's character. Like,
I would have been.
I would have too, honestly. He reminded me of a crazy person who used to live on my couch. Like, I would have gotten along great.
I have a quote too.
Ooh.
Rafkin, "There are ghosts in the basement." Maggie, "This basement?" Rafkin, "Of course this basement. What is it with you people? If it was the basement next door, I wouldn't give a would I?"
That was a good
That
line.
was a good line too.
Like, duh.
Oh, and when Cyrus when the woman who just sort of like had the 180 character switch, where she was like the Greenpeace of ghost hunting, and then, just kidding, she's Cyrus's lover.
That was weird.
And yeah, it was very weird. And there was the ancient book of magic that had the cutout in the back for the modern sound reel, and that was missing. And Cyrus like pushes her and yells at her, and she goes, "You're not mad at me, are you?" And it was like, maybe he's a little bit. I think the pushing and yelling at you may have.
Listen, some of us are insecure, and we have attachment issues, and we have to have things spelled out for us.
That was such a weird shift, though, where the whole movie she was very like, a little almost Laura Croft, and how she was just bumping around, and then the second Cyrus reappears, she just sort of melts and is like, "I'm devoted to you."
Well, I have to say, I have to say the other weird part about that was, and I couldn't get it out of my head, it's like she just shows up all of a sudden after they're saying the doors are locked. And then all of a sudden she's there and she's like, I snuck in through the secret place. Well, let's go. Well, no, it's locked. And nobody, at that point, it's like, okay, wait a second. Wait a second. I've seen this before in a movie. I'm not sure I trust this woman.
It did, time has passed since between them catching the Juggernaut and the family getting trapped in the house. And I understood the whole Cyrus faked his death, but why was he still in the makeup from faking his death?
Right. And not only that, but he wasn't really dead.
Right.
So he's hiding in a glass house. Where was he hiding? Under a chair? In a box?
Yeah, they should have had him like
the walls are glass.
They should have had him like peeking out behind curtains the whole
house.
There's so many things. There's so many things to talk about. There's so many questions I have.
I think we were supposed to think he was a ghost and then surprise he's not.
Yeah.
And that's why he still had the makeup.
Yeah, but then at the end, here's the thing. So wife, withered woman, withered lover, the kid doesn't recognize mother's voice. She shows up. Oh, he can only see her wearing the glasses and she still has all the burn marks. Yeah. And then at the end of the movie, just so that it could pull some strings, she shows up again, but now they're not wearing the glasses and she doesn't have the burn marks.
Because love is the most powerful force there is.
Like, get with it, okay? And love of this movie closes all the plot holes. So just
actually, you know what closes one of the plot holes? I realized as we were talking, Matthew Lillard's character was in fact the 13th ghost because he sacrificed himself.
But he saw himself from the beginning. So if he knew that it was going to happen, he's like, well, I guess I could save this guy, but does he really, is it really a sacrifice if he knew it was going to happen?
Yeah, because it hadn't happened and he still had a choice. There's still free will.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, he had not seen the future in most other situations. He had always seen the past or just the ghosts. So I am making up a little bit of plot here, but he was confused seeing the future because that wasn't his normal MO of his X-Men powers.
That makes sense. Patty Negri's house is 105 years old. Patty has a lovely house in the Hollywood Hills, and it has a Hollywood connection beyond just being in the Hollywood Hills. And I can't remember whose cabin it was, but it's so lovely. I love Patty's house. I guess there's one thing we should do, and that is to vote. Oh, does it have ghosts, Patty? Does Patty's house have ghosts? I think it does.
It has dolls, and those are horrifying. So
does a ghost haunt the woods?
Patty does have some dolls which are haunted. Okay, one's up, one's down. I'm using my handy dandy sunglasses. So you know what? I'm going to put my wand up.
I'm going to wand up too. I have to, I can talk trash about the movie all day, but I sat through the whole thing and didn't play on my phone. It held my attention.
I'm wands up because I love it. No matter what, it holds up for me. I think it's great. I have the power to suspend my disbelief enough to close those plot holes and just enjoy it for what it is, which is not the best movie on earth, but it's
no Killing Tree, but it's a close second or 10th.
Nothing is Killing Tree. Maybe Ouija Shark will be, but that remains to be seen.
Well, I'm doing it halfway because I did like the concept, and I really hope they remake it one day with a little bit less of the gears and all that other stuff.
Well, so I think the series is going to focus only on the ghosts, and some of them take place in the 50s. So
yeah,
I think we might actually like the ghosts. And you out there, we have Mary Jane King wands up, we have Alyssa wands up, we have Robert Hicks wands up, Ray and Angel Ortiz wands up, Robert Hicks is way up, Colin is wands up, Thomas is wands up, Mickey is wands up, Christy is wands up. We have a lot of wands up.
Clearly, everyone knows what they're talking about.
And I will add that a recurring thought I had while watching the film was every time I was like, man, I really don't like this. This voice in my head would literally say, but Lair of the White Worm is one of your favorite movies. So why is that brilliant and this isn't? So I was like, okay, you're right. Weird inner voice that chose that moment to speak up.
This
Miss
movie
Heather-
was not supposed to be an award winner. It's supposed to be corny. It's supposed to be, it's not supposed.
Yeah.
So, you take it for what it is.
Right.
Miss Heather, while you're there, what are we watching next week?
The Little Mermaid, animated 1989 film.
Because it is your
birthday.
Yay.
My birthday choice.
Yay!
And we have not talked about The Little Mermaid yet, and what a witch that movie has.
Oh, I'm excited.
We are all excited. I can tell on our faces. So next week, The Little Mermaid, and where can we find you, everybody? Whoever goes first, where can we find you? Thumper.
You can find me on social media. I am at Fivefold Law pretty much everywhere. I recommend TikTok. That's where I do my best work. I also write the blog Fivefold Law for Patheos Pagan. And I have my first full-length book, The Chaos Apple, Magic and Discordianism, for the Postmodern Witch, coming out in November. That Heather edited.
Ms. Tabitha Meadows.
You can find me on Facebook for private readings. Thank you very much.
Yay.
Ms. Courtney Buckley.
That's me. I am at the Themes on TikTok, Twitch, and Blue Sky.
Ms. Heather Green.
I'm on the socials, Facebook and Blue Sky and Instagram and whatever else. I'm usually Heather Green 01 or Heather Green Writes, or you can find me HeatherGreen.net. HeatherGreen.net is my website. And I am planning for Mystic South, which is going to be coming up here in about 6 weeks. So please check out the Mystic South website if you want to go there and join 700 of your closest friends for 3 days of witchy and occult fun. So join us, join me, come see me.
And I am Richard-Lael and Lillard. I'll be in Scotland next year. You can find me at tracelesstours.com/sacred tours. You can find me at my website, which I never answer because I get overwhelmed, thegentlemanpsychic.com. But I am also the Gentleman Psychic everywhere. Richard-Lael Lillard everywhere. There are some fakes, but I'm really easy to find. Anyway, there is one more thing we have to do, and that is what all witches do, and that is to cackle. And here we go. 3, 2, 1.